Okay, so the next on the agenda is Matt Coleman, who's going to talk to us about, give us sort of an overview of what's been happening in the math department and where we're going to from here. Ooh, go math.
We should do this on March 14th and make it.
So as the slides are coming down, I just wanted to thank you for having me. It is always nice to present in front of you guys. So pretty much the goal, and I know you guys have seen the slides, and I'm going to talk through some of the, I would say, finer details. The goal pretty much is to kind of give you an overview of what has happened in the last 4 years. It's hard to believe that it has been 4 years. And some of the things that I'd hope to work on, and hopefully we can talk about some of the, I guess, different aspects and different things I'll be asking of Dr. Chesson, Dr. Bodie, all of you guys, and of the department as well. Although this is a presentation, and it's in a presentation format, I encourage you to ask questions throughout. If something kind of strikes you, feel free to ask. That's fine. I know the last slide refers to questions, and I'll take some then as well, but if something does strike you, feel free to ask. So, I'll talk about
Replacement lamp?
replacement lamp,
Oh,
You just have to hit
the eternal
okay.
problem.
You need to hit OK.
What's that?
You need to hit OK.
on the computer, probably.
No, I think it's on, there we go.
Okay.
There we go, we're all
Excellent.
set.
Of course.
As soon as everybody runs, everybody gets scared.
We're good? All right. So, just to give you a little history. It's not like I've been here forever. It's really only been 4 years, but started in June 2012. Lucky enough to be offered the job. I started pretty much right away. It was one of those things where at that time, I want to say the sixth grade team may have been attending some workshops at EDCO, and I had joined them, and there were all these other little things happening. During the summer that year, there was also some elementary PD. I had a chance to do that. I spent a lot of the summer cleaning, organizing, trying to wrap my head around what the job would be, meeting with a lot of you guys, meeting with a lot of community members. It was awesome. It was really, really good. September, when that started, pretty much I had spent as much time as I could in classrooms. I fully admitted at the beginning it was more time in the middle schools and high schools because of the fact that I think there was a lot of work to be done there, and I think there's been a lot of good stuff that's happened. And at that time, I was pretty much analyzing as much data as I could. My goal at that point was really just trying to get a sense of what I can accomplish in the short term, and then what would be done over the next couple of years. So some of the big things, and I don't know if you guys remember back that first year, but these were some of the big things that I would say drove my thought as to where we are right now. It really struck me as being really interesting that my first year here, there was only 76% of the seniors taking a math class. That really stuck with me. I thought that was kind of interesting in this town. There was only one math science specialist in all of K through 5. My predecessor was part-time, and there was that one person working with that. In this school, and this kind of refers back to, I think, point number 1, we only had 2 sections of AP Calc AB, which I don't want to say one is better than the other, but that's the AP Calc that's basically one semester. And that was the only AP course we offered at the high school level, which was kind of interesting. We had no computer science at the high school. The middle school teachers were using curriculum from 2000, which didn't take into account that there was a standard shift in 2004 and in 2011. So this was a little antiquated. And at the elementary level, I would say it was inconsistent. It was one of those things where at the time, I think we had, just different resources allocated at different places. In spite of all these things, these are big things I noticed. Things were going well, they were going good, but it really kind of gave me a little bit of a focus of what was going to happen. So the past 4 years, this is pretty much what I focused on. And in my mind, I always chunked it as, K through 5 initiatives, 6 through 8 initiatives, and high school initiatives. At the elementary level, really kind of my big focus was trying to get an infrastructure in that could really start to focus on curriculum and instruction at the elementary level. In terms of getting a lot more resources, that was going to be a tough sell at the beginning. I don't know if you guys remember at 2012, New standards came in at 2011. A lot of the textbook distributors at that time rearranged what their content was. They slapped on the Common Core sticker, and then they resold it as something that was brand new. It really didn't meet what we needed. So at that time, my decision and what we kind of went for was, let's attack more of the curriculum instruction aspect of it. Let's try to support the teachers. Let's try to get something a little bit more in there and kind of wait out until we felt as though the better curriculum content or something that was more in line with what we wanted, both in practice and content, was there. And in the meantime, we also had some digital, I would say, technological improvements throughout the district. So incorporating something that was a little bit more tech savvy was something that was good as well. So that took a little bit of patience. That's that bullet point number 2. That's where we're kind of starting right now. You know, in the background, I always wanted to kind of refresh that K through 5 curriculum because it was chunked. It was kind of a Franken curriculum. Is that a good way to say it? So it was one of those things where we definitely needed refreshing, but we needed to wait a little bit. So initially, it really was about just that support. Like, how do we actually get it so we could have consistent professional development in the summertime, consistent people to go to for questions, someone who could be in classes a little more frequently to see what's happening. You know, I have a lot of energy, and I try to pride myself on being a lot of places. I don't think I could have been in 9 places at once. So it's been great to have those other resources to help me out. At the middle school, you know, this was one of those things where there were some pretty clear needs with restructuring our math support program at that time. We had 2 teachers who were in charge of working with a lot of students who were struggling across all grades. At that time, they were structured in a way that it was tough to really meet the needs of everybody, so we restructured a little bit there. And we really tried to foster a relationship with special ed that's continuing to be done right now. We had a lot of students at that time also who were looking for other opportunities for advancement. I would never say that I've actually solved all the problems that we have, but the bypassing option has been a pretty good solution for some of our students right now. Curriculum update. Luckily enough, the folks who wrote CMP, Connected Math, they were a little bit ahead of curve with the updating of their curriculum. So it was one of those things when we shifted over to CMP3, we were able to actually do that in year 2 and year 3 of my time. We're at full implementation right now. I think it's been a great sell for the teachers. They've really bought in. I think it was one of those things that at the time we needed a refresher, and it's done a good job for them. First year here also, and this was a big goal. A lot of times it's not rocket science, and this was definitely, you know, I have to thank Laura and Kathy for doing this. Getting release time, like full day release time with teachers, my first year and second year, just to sit down and look at the standards, plan, kind of reset calibration. It was one of those things where in the first 2 years we did a lot of that, and it was awesome. The other thing is we really at that time I also saw a huge need for computer science in the middle school. Nothing at the high school, wasn't anything at the middle school, but there was this little Nook class called DCL, Digital Citizenship and Literacy at that time, which covered some good stuff, but it was definitely a place where we can kind of change some stuff. And at that time, I know there's some percentages throughout this, that class was mandatory, but it essentially covered 76% of the kids who were in 6th grade. AHS. You know, I already kind of alluded to some of the things that were areas that I wanted to kind of work in there. That's all up here. Creating new course offerings was big. That kind of lends itself to the fact that we only had 76% of the seniors. We had to figure out more pathways, more ways for our students to access with actually the content and different pathways. So I really focused on those higher level classes and the lower level classes. I kind of tackled and went after the extremes to see if we can make some inroads there. We built a CS program. That was a big thing. Another big part at the high school was that at that time there were 11 high school math teachers. 5 had over 128 students. At that time, the math department in the high school there was a lot of teachers who had a lot of students, and that was over. I want to say the high that year was 136 for one teacher. It was a lot. And I needed to figure out ways to get a little bit more common planning time for those teachers. This is amazing, and I still to this day can't imagine this. My first year here, no single math teacher in the high school had a common planning time with a teacher who taught the same level of the same course. I don't think if you tried to schedule that would happen. I was amazed by that. I thought that was one of the most amazing things I had seen. So it was really tough for us to get a lot of kind of conversation. So current state. You know, that was a quick little overview. Any questions for all that stuff? Those are the big things that I saw.
How's CMP going in the middle school?
I think it's going well. You know, it's one of the things where they're at that point right now, since we're in about year 2, year 3,
Yeah.
teachers are now starting to make their own adjustments because they feel more comfortable. You know, whenever you initially adopt it, when you make those changes, you may not understand the ripple effect until it's too late. So that first year, I asked for 100% fidelity.
Yep.
Year 2, you make your minor adjustments. Now that we're in year 3, there's some ownership. There's some more thoughtful changes.
Yep.
There are some other little aspects that are being modified, and I think it's now becoming more Arlington curriculum as opposed to CMP3, which is nice. But it takes time. You know, it's what's also good is it's a form of PD for the teachers as well. They have to lend themselves to trying something a little different, trying something new. Because of the program, you know, our 8th grade team chose collaboration and discourse as their goals to work on for this year, because it really dovetailed in nicely with what and how the content was actually delivered, and it's been great. You know, some of the things that I've seen in the class, both in terms of the content and the conversations, has been really good.
I would really, we're also using that in Lexington.
Yeah.
And this is our second year
Yep.
of implementation. And I'm trying to get together a couple of districts
Let's do
that
it.
might want to work together
Yep.
to make some of those modifications, because I've seen some good ones, and I feel like I want to share some.
We should talk, because there's another local district that's going to make the change for next year too.
Oh, good.
So we could definitely talk. So now, I mean, this is great. We have 6 math coaches. You know, over 3 years, we've been able to build that up, and it's been awesome. I can't tell you how invaluable they are to me. They're great. They really are great. I'm lucky to work with them. And still, there is this focus on curriculum instruction, professional development, because we were waiting out kind of the movement towards a new curriculum. The curriculum visions, this is kind of the big one for us for the next couple of years. We are going to adopt the new Investigations 3.0, and that's going to start next year, so I'll touch on that in a little bit. We revised the progress reports. Finally, they actually match the current standards and match all the initial stuff. And these all sound like such simple little things, but it takes time, it takes work, it takes a lot of meeting with teachers and figuring out the best way to go about it. And right now, we're kind of in the midst of restructuring what I would call our Tier 2 and Tier 3, our kind of secondary supports for some of our struggling learners, and some instances just other students who might need a little bit of help. The coaches satisfy what I would call kind of Tier 1 support, which is that curriculum, that instruction part, but we really need to kind of start to focus on what happens for some of those groups of students who might be struggling, or individual students who need a little bit more. We still haven't built that up as much as we can.
Yes, Mr. Hayner.
The second line on the slide begs the question, 6 equals 7. Are there any plans to have another one?
Yeah, you know, to add even more math, it's 5.0 FTE for 6 coaches for
Okay.
7 schools. Yeah,
Okay.
so they're not even all full-time. So yeah, I always have my grand plans, but you know, it would be one of those things where I would love it if we had a one-to-one correspondence.
I guess I was looking to the question up here, less to you, for the future.
Oh, when we get to the slide about what I see for the
Right,
future,
you're
we'll talk about that.
There's a wish list in there.
Yeah, that's right.
What's that? Yeah, please, yes. So that's Cabrita's current state. Current state of OMS, we're fully implemented with CMP3. It's going well. We're definitely in line with movements, what I think is good, which is much more collaborative-based classrooms, much more conversation, a little more ownership of the knowledge. And teachers are really starting to be thoughtful about the ways in which they're asking questions, which is nice. And I would say this also, the infusion of some of the technology that we've had in 6th grade has also helped with that. It shifted the way in which some of the kids can communicate. DCL, which I talked about before, which was 76% of enrollment, now we've renamed as DML, Digital Media and Literacy, and essentially that course is now, we're supporting 88% of the kids, which, you know, considering that the cohorts of kids are actually growing larger, we're working with a lot more kids now with the same FTEs that we had before. But now the citizenship aspect is the secondary goal. We do a lot more, I would say, robust units that are all focusing on design, algorithm thinking, good project-based things that kids are doing in Scratch, HTML, at the 6th grade level, which is awesome. It's hard to get that in the middle school, and the fact that we found some real estate in 6th grade is awesome. Math support. Talked a little about the structure, and we were able to get it so now that we have 1 math support teacher per grade, 1 that's dedicated to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8, which has been invaluable to me as well. It's increased our ability to actually almost read and react with some students a little bit more. Before, we'd populate our classes and there wasn't a whole lot of room for movement. Now I could actually start with a lower student enrollment and actually grow throughout the year, which is good. Another thing that the math support teacher does. I got to say this. If you guys ever go to the middle school and you see your friendly math support teacher, please thank them. They have a hard job. They do great work. They also co-teach our separate math classes with the special educator, and all three of them also have other obligations. Julie McDaniel in 6th grade teaches the independent study in geometry. Shukti Fishel does some work in kind of outreach with ELL. And then Jeff Melton, because of the fact that there was a higher enrollment in 8th grade, actually teaches a section of Math 8 to actually help balance out the sections. So for a lot of those teachers, all three of them, they have 3 or 4 different preps. They're trying to communicate with multiple teachers. They're doing really great work, really great work, and really helping out in a lot of ways.
Dr. Allison, if you had it.
What you're saying about the changes towards a collaborative content model.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I know we're interested in achievement and assessment of that, but I'm wondering if you're seeing more interest and enthusiasm, because I think that's really important to develop in kids too.
Yeah, I would say that also goes in conjunction, and I put in the slides, but I have to kind of definitely tout the work that John McIntyre has done with the middle school math club. There's a lot more opportunities. There's a lot more things for kids to do, and when I go through the classrooms, kids are happy. They're doing math. They're working. It's oftentimes when you walk in, kids will ask me questions. I don't see many dour faces. I don't see many kids who are not. I wouldn't say kids are jumping off the rafters having like the greatest time in the world, but there is, enthusiasm. Definitely is. And then the bypassing. I kind of treaded lightly with the bypassing because if you don't have the full-fledged geometry class, oftentimes it's a race to nowhere. So now we bypass 6th grade. We actually have a fully formed geometry class that actually matches the same geometry class that we have at the high school. One of the great things about Julie McDaniel is that she taught in the high school. She has a good working relationship with the teachers here. They share content. They're at the same place. I feel pretty good about the fact that those students in those courses are, receiving a pretty good education in terms of the math. Those students.
Sorry, technical
That's right.
problems.
There you go.
You got the green light? Those students going inside there's 7 kids inside that class. That class is awesome. Those kids are so excited about the math they're doing. They've done some really good stuff. Current state of the high school. If there is one thing I'm probably the most proud of, it's probably that first thing. Before, 76% of seniors. I double-checked this again last week to make sure I was right. It's 97% of seniors now. We're virtually at 99% of all kids taking a math class across the board. And I think one of the greatest stats also is that if you look at capacity of the math department right now in the high school against enrollment, we're actually at 111% because we have kids that are doing 2 classes at the same time. They're taking computer science. They're doing a lot of other stuff. It's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty amazing. And I attribute that all to the work of the math teachers. I mean, they're not only, putting these courses in, they're making these courses, I think, worthwhile and fun. I don't know if that answers a little bit about the enthusiasm as well. Like the kids are coming back to the math classes. Kids are coming back and they're staying. And that's really kind of, I would say, helped out. We've definitely had an increase in staffing, which we've needed to kind of take some of that on, and it's been great. I know talked a little about computer science this morning. My first year, no computer science. We have 93 kids currently this year across 5 sections, and right now we have about 104 kids signed up for next year. And enrollment hasn't stopped, which is great. Kids are accessing that class. In terms of the increasing staffing, that's been a huge help. Right now, the staffing, the per pupil, average that a teacher has, it's more in line with the rest of the school, which I feel good about. And since I'm a numbers person, I pay a lot of attention to standard deviation and variance and make sure that things are balanced. I said before about the number of teachers who had over 126, 128 students. Now the highest that anybody has is 124, and that's the highest, which is good. It's a lot more manageable. The teachers are appreciative of the fact that they're not overwhelmed. Everyone is taking ownership over the education, which is great. It's really good. Goals moving forward. So I just kind of chunked this in 3 things. I'll have a couple slides up here to kind of reinforce what it is. It's at that point right now, it sounds kind of weird, but year 1, year 2, I was reading and reacting to, I would say, what was here before. Year 3 and year 4, I really feel like this is, my department now. This is one of those things where I want to set the tone. I have a better handle of all the stats. I have a better handle of what we're doing moving forward. So these would be the big things going forward for me. We've done a good development, still work to do, of that coaching team. We have a 3-year plan for the infusion of a new curriculum. So I feel over that 7 years, we have a good plan for curriculum instruction with a little bit of enhancement in the assessment. What we have to start to do is actually build more of a robust program that is that tier 2, tier 3 part. We need to be able to now start to find that time within a school day. We have to find possibly those assessments that are going to inform us of these individual things that we could do with students. And then we actually have to start to hire some staff. Right now, it's not where I'd want it to be, but the way I envision it, I think before you were talking about what I'd like to see, I do want to see a coach at every school, and I do want to see a student interventionist in a school. Like, what I'd like to see is that team, that cooperation of someone who's going to be working with teachers, with instruction, with the content, and then someone who's going to be working together with the principal who will be focused on individual students if they need to be pulled, or small groups. And in my vision, it's also a good relationship with special education as well. Like, to me, that seems to make sense. It seems to be that we can actually accomplish a lot. I have no illusion that I'll be able to get 14 staff members over the next couple of years, so I'm fine with treading slowly. So, one of the things you'll see is, how do we start to actually work with those students? So when I see these high-need students, I see it starting in kindergarten, going all the way up, and I want to make sure we have a pretty comprehensive program to actually work with these students. At OMS, oddly enough, I said before about all the good things that are happening in math sport. I still think we can fine-tune it and do it a little bit better. Right now we're echoing the main curriculum that we do, but the reality is I like to start to work with students on more of an individual basis if we can, and find a secondary curriculum that can actually help supplement some of what we're doing. In terms of OMS and AHS, this kind of goes together. We also have to kind of figure out a better way to meet the varying needs of a lot of our students. We're working with social emotional, sometimes we're working with cognitive, we're working behavioral. So how do we actually take those math support resources to create a more diverse support system or offering for all of these students? And in AHS, the restructuring in the math special ed, I just alluded to, we're pretty much, Dan Sheldon and I, the computer science teacher, we talk pretty regularly about what we want to see happen. And this ties into the ultimate one. I want to start to increase some more math offerings, and I want to do it in a way we can offer some half-year electives, because of the fact that I like to start to see more kids take the chance to try out some of these classes. Right now, with all of our classes, we're at 111%, and it's amazing, but kids are committing themselves to full-year classes. So I could see us in the CS department start to consider half-year electives. I could see us putting in courses such as linear algebra that can be accessed after an Algebra 2 background, for the most part, and it could be a half-year course for some students to take. Something like a number theory. All this has to be done in conjunction with staffing, and that's one of the things I always work on, is bringing in good people who could teach these classes. But really, what I want to start to do is to round out the department to not just have these core Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 pathways with the standard capstone courses, but to offer something that's a little bit more, when you get to college and realize math is a lot more than just calc. I want to offer some glimpse into that, and I'd like to start to make some connections with other stuff. But for the most part, that's kind of what we're looking for. Little things. Was that the end?
That's it.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Any questions?
Great, thanks.
Matt, can I just emphasize?
Please.
There was something you skipped over, and that is the need to build CS
Oh,
courses.
yeah. Sorry, thank you. Yes. Middle school. I really, really would love to get 7th and 8th grade computer science. That's going to take a little bit of work with both staffing and also kind of massaging the schedule and figuring out how to actually make that work. It's not as easy as it sounds. There are a lot of obstacles, but that's one of those things where I'll be pushing for the next couple of years. How do I actually get it to be a 6 through 12 good, cohesive pathway?
Mr. Thielen.
So thank you, Matt. Good presentation. As always, my question is, if, we might not be able to do all of this budget.
No, yeah.
So, but.
It's a goal, right?
It's a goal, yeah. So, that's right. So as a goal, what would be your priorities? If you were to go to Dr. Bodie and say, this is what I want to do in FY18, what would you, you don't have to commit to it right now, but
Yeah.
in this, what are your kind of top priorities here?
It's tough for me to answer because, like I said before, I think about it as K through 5, 6 through 8.
Yep.
And if I say any one, it might diminish the others. I would say probably that the top part right now would be really working with K through 5, getting the coaches, getting the interventionists, getting the curriculum solidly in there would probably be priority number 1 because I think that would pay dividends for all grades eventually at some point. So that would probably be, item number 1. I could always, I always try to be creative with staffing and enrollment at the other grades. So I'd probably say the elementary stuff.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes, Mr. Hayner.
Thank you again for a phenomenal presentation. My only concern with all these extra courses and 111%
Yeah.
is the emotional issue and the pressure on the kids. Are you and your teachers involved in basically evaluating how much kids are doing? I know,
Like overall with everything?
well, the idea, I mean, you mentioned that some students are taking more than one math course at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And other AP courses and things of that nature, they may be taken that aren't math related. I'm just concerned that departments are isolated, that there's not this coordination to all of a sudden realize that you got a student taking like 3 or 4 AP courses at once.
So I'll tell you this, guidance has done a pretty good job of monitoring that. They often look at that. They often are advising kids, I think, in a pretty thoughtful way. I don't think we can grow much past 111% because after a while, there's almost a cannibalization. The reality is our CS numbers jumped up, but our CAD numbers went down. There's only so many sections and so many things to do. What I kind of view it as is I want to give kids some opportunity to take some classes. I by no means believe that would go to 120%. What I believe is that the courses would just be distributed differently. It's great for me to see that a lot of our kids didn't choose calc as their through thread. They're choosing the AP Stats course because a lot of times that's more transferable to what they might do in the future. So I don't think there's going to be, I hope, I don't mean this to intend that there's going to be kids taking 4 or 5 math classes. I just want to give them the opportunity to take a course if they want, and then, for me to staff it appropriately, fully knowing that enrollment for another course would go down.
I want to make it clear, I am excited about all the offerings that you're offering, and the more that you go, I think it's an exciting thing to give students the multiple choices. And just the idea of calculus, I don't know how many people that aren't math majors or very heavy science majors, the stats course is something all of us can use.
Yeah, they're good courses. They're good courses, and they speak well to each other. Computer science and stats. I mean, that's an avenue where I'd like to see a little more integration because at this point they are so interrelated.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Starks.
I'm really excited about the computer science. At my daughter's graduation this year, the keynote speaker was the woman who founded Girls Who Code.
Yeah.
And she was unbelievable. And she got up there and said that the number one job, we are about to have a shortage of programmers. And not only, her goal is not only to make the United States the number one supplier, but she is going to do it by getting girls to code. And it was fascinating, and she was unbelievable. And then yesterday, I attended a summit, and the keynote speaker was Kathy Fosnett. And she was talking about how the number one important thing that they have found that kids need going into kindergarten and starting early is early numeracy. The most important thing, even more important than reading and literacy, because if they have the math, the reading comes easier. And that is the number one indicator. And I was just like, oh, this makes me so excited to be a teacher right now. Like, look at us. We've got to get to these.
I agree with everything you just said. Kathy Fosno is fantastic. No, it is. I mean, it's it's great. It really is. Any type of early intervention and doing things well at the early grades really, really does pay dividends long term.
Yeah.
That definitely is one of my hopes. Yeah.
So, good. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
I want to, saying this also, everything we talked about, everything that's happened was money and resources. Like, for me, it's thank you to you guys. This is one of those things where I do appreciate the trust that you guys had in terms of the teachers, myself, and building all of this because, it's an investment, and I think we're getting stuff out of our investment right now. We are seeing some improvements. It's what we do now. Like, I actually think, I was talking to my wife about this a couple nights ago, I actually think my job for the next couple of years is going to be harder than the first couple of years, because now we're talking about fine tuning. We're talking about trying to be much more creative. Like, these are big, broad stroke, changes that you can do with some investment, some personnel. It's about to get a lot harder, and that's good. That's all right.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Allison Amby.
I'm trying to remember the name of the program. I think it's PlayDoh that we have done for enrichment for students who are having achievement problems or something in math. And I'm wondering, I don't even know if this comes under your department per se.
Special ed use that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you work with them at all? I'm wondering if it's helpful or not from
So-
your in your
Yeah, there are so many computer programs out there right now that different teachers are using, at different levels. One of the hard parts for me is corralling it all and understanding what exactly we want to use. So special ed has used PlayDoh. I think there are pros and cons to it. It's a little bit more superficial. It's good as the resource it's used for. I would say it's like kind of a tier 2, tier 3 resource, as long as there's a staff member who's also working with the student as well. It's good practice. There are other things throughout. It would be a long conversation. I could tell you different things that are happening at different levels. But yeah, for the most part, I would say that's primarily used by special ed.
Mr. Carden.
Thank you. A great presentation. So as we talk about adding more, math support, we've added, over the probably last 5 or 10 years, we've added reading support, we've added social workers, we've added these math coaches, literacy coaches, we've added a lot of out-of-classroom staff. So one way we can do that, though, is by sort of balancing that against class size.
Yep.
And so I think we have to have a conversation and also educate the parents that, yes, class sizes may creep up a little bit, but because we've got all this other support, it may not be the end of the world. So I think if we want to push in that direction, then that's a conversation we have to start having.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot more control over the class sizes of the middle school and high school, and I do put a lot of work. Actually before this, I was in my office crunching numbers and trying to figure out the best way to balance everything at the middle school. And I think that's been done pretty well so far. I think it's getting better. But yeah, everything, a lot of times it's a zero-sum game, and you just have to figure out what it is that you value, what your goals are, what you want to see as a typical class size. And I think a lot of the things you alluded to at the elementary level, what you're okay with, and then how do we actually build the structures around that as well. But yeah, it's never easy.
Oh, Ms. Starks.
I have one more
Yes.
question I just remembered. So tonight, we vote
Yep.
Gibbs, 6th grade,
Yeah.
or Gibbs, 6, 7, 8?
On the spot. An opinion.
Yeah, no problem.
Little input.
My personal feeling, everything that I've talked to for the teachers, I would say Gibbs 6th grade.
Okay.
I would say that's where I would be leaning towards right now, if those were the two choices.
Okay. Does that make the intervention easier, more possible in 6th grade? Because now we can play with the schedules, we can find out time.
It's hard to say what the infrastructure will be, because it also comes with a restructuring, I would imagine, of staffing, and I'd imagine before I can answer that, I'd have to see what the restructuring of the staffing would be and what I'd have for resources, and then try to make a plan off of that. I don't know if it would be easier or harder. I can tell you this, I'll do the best I can to figure it out.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
And I'll just say just a couple things, which is I'm particularly excited about the introduction potentially of linear algebra and the statistics courses, because from personal experience, I know there's a lot of really fun math that is not calculus.
There is.
There's
I
a
mean,
lot of other fun math out there.
and it's all related. A real good linear algebra course, you really should have some calc. Right. But you could pull off a linear algebra class without it, and relate it, transfer it to what's happening in some of your science classes and computer science classes, which is good. Guys, thank you very much.
Good. Well,
It was fun.
thanks for
so
sharing.
much. Thank
Have
you.
fun.
Thank you.